Welcome to Berlin Footnote. This is Sidenote 001a. I'm Agnes von Witzleben. This transmission, we won't be taking our usual tour, but this will be a dispatch of various performances, discussions, and field recordings adjacent to our psychogeographic investigations. Our side note begins in Neukölln at Sonnenallee 100 on November 6, 2025, at a place called the Casino for Social Medicine. The casino describes itself as an anti-capitalist collective and bar, but that only gets us part of the way there. The casino part comes from the fact that it used to be a casino, and perhaps figured that'd be a way that they wouldn't have to tear down the old sign. It's also kind of a social clinic, a mutual aid hub, a public living room, and an experiment in what a third space might still be when the city has become so efficient at converting every form of togetherness into rent. Its program changes constantly because the place is built around what people bring into it. On one night, there might be a help desk for bureaucracy, translation, paperwork, or digital security. On another, a talk on migration, anti-colonial struggle, or social movements. Through the Anarchist School for Social Medicine, the room can become a temporary clinic, with free or low-cost bodywork, peer mental health support, writing groups, art therapy sessions, performances, screenings, political education. I was there for their first Thursday evening monthly Künstler-Künstlerin event, an evening of curated performances hosted by Annita Sleep. My pal Daniel Zander was performing that night.
Put your hands together for the very mysterious Daniel.
Delirious and addictive orgasmic secretions, donating osmotic wounds and sleep. Within this homesick, architectonically molded wound, only sleep, only dream, only desire to be within thee, to be carefully poured into sheer paranoia.
Later that night, Daniel mentioned that he stumbled across a clip online from an old Los Angeles talk show called The Wally George Show.
And now, David, oh boy, we got it here tonight. David, we introduce our first guest.
I don't know whether to introduce these guys or to run out of here screaming. But anyway, this is a gothic rock group called Radio Werewolf.
Your name is
Nikolas Schreck.
Nikolas Schreck. You know, I've investigated you guys, and I have found out that these maniacs
I'm surprised if you could investigate anything, George.
Oh, listen to this one. I have discovered, I've had other bands and groups on my show, but I've discovered these vermin are the most vile, evil group I've ever seen, ever.
Flattery will get you nowhere.
It will be remembered as this insane collision between two shock performers, with Wally playing the patriotic outrage and Schreck playing the occult menace.
Radio Werewolf goes much beyond good and evil by your mortal understanding of those words.
You see, Schreck was at the eye of the storm during the infamous Satanic Panic in the United States.
The Radio Werewolf Youth Party is leading a crusade to take youth out of the corruption and decadence that the vile rock music of the past 20 years has brought upon this earth.
Wait a minute, you have a Radio Werewolf youth movement?
The Radio Werewolf Youth Movement is spreading all over this globe even as we speak.
Wait a minute,
we are
it says
broadcasting the dominant frequency all across this globe. We are the future of this world, George, and you are the past.
That's it. Hey, here's what I think of the future of Radio Werewolf. I'll be right back.
And as Wally George ripped up his album cover, I knew this would require further investigation. Then, as luck would have it, a couple months later, during the Berlinale, my director friend Ari Gold and his musician identical twin brother Ethan Gold were in town, holding secret screenings of their film. Ethan had been living in Berlin, and a few years earlier he met Nikolas Schreck, who, as luck would also have it, apparently lives here too, and has been since the 90s. The two bonded after reminiscing about the times they visited Haiti in their childhoods. That's a whole other story that I'll get into another time, but it involves voodoo. There was one Radio Werewolf track in particular that caught me off guard, Epiphany on the Freinberg. So the Gold brothers invited me out for an evening of hobnobbing at the various Berlinale parties I'd otherwise never be able to get into. I didn't realize it at the time who I was meeting. I didn't make the connection to the Wally George clip from the 1980s. Nikolas had changed somewhat from his teenage television incarnation. He was now completely shaven, dressed with a kind of Victorian-age elegance and missing an ear. Before we all went our separate ways, I mentioned the research I was doing at the Romanisches Café. And then something strange happened. Schreck told me that when he was a teenager, he had experienced the life-changing vision of his previous life, specifically at the Romanisches Café in Berlin, where we'll be conducting our next tour. He agreed to meet for an interview with me and my pal Daniel.
The Romanisches Café is very important to me because of why I'm in Berlin and all of that. So I believe I was about 20, 19, 20, something like that. And in Los Angeles, I had a vision, not the first one, but a spontaneous vision of a past life, a memory clearly of a past life. And what I saw, like I'm sitting in a living room, and then everything vanished, and I was time traveling. I saw the 1920s Berlin, just a normal street scene on Kurfürstendamm, and I saw, I didn't know what the Romanisches Café was specifically at that time at all, but I saw a specific structure. I was sitting at an outdoor table at a cafe. I could hear German, I could hear people speaking. It was like literally being there. And I saw a person with their back to me wearing a fedora like this one that I'm wearing now. And I knew that that was who I used to be in my probably most recent past life. And I was sitting with two gaudy flappers, typical of the Weimar era, but with a lot of makeup on, scantily dressed, so it looked like summer. And I knew instinctively, because I could connect with who this person was, that I was some kind of petty criminal and pimp, and that these two women were prostitutes in my stable. And all that information came to me like a fact. And that was it. Then it vanished, it disappeared. And I already had an interest in Berlin and in German silent movies and krautrock and films and music and art that were specifically connected to Berlin. But that ignited something deeper and a memory of it.
There's a track called The Epiphany on the Freinberg.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I want to ask you specifically, what was the Epiphany on Freinberg?
The Freinberg is a hill in near Linz, Österreich, Austria. And when Hitler was a teenager, he and August Kubizek, his best and only friend, saw a performance of Richard Wagner's Rienzi at the Linzer Oper, the Linzer Opera House. And during the production, I don't know if you know the plot of Rienzi, is about a Roman a common person who becomes the tribune of his people. And it shows his rise to power as a populist leader. He becomes the voice of the people, and then his violent downfall, which is chaotic. And after that, Kubizek wrote in his memoirs later that Hitler was in a state of exaltation after watching Rienzi, and then they went up to this hill and looked down at Linz to Freinberg. And he said, now I know what I have to do with my life. So that is what the Epiphany at the Freinberg is about. That was the point of Radio Werewolf, which is very much misunderstood today by conspiracy theorists who look at my old interviews and have all these insane ideas of predictive programming and the New World Order and mind control. And, yes, but Radio Werewolf was meant to change people's minds through the frequencies and sound and that. And I do actually personally think Lightning in the Sun, that album, which Epiphany on the Freinberg, is the purest example of that.
We'll be hearing more of Nikolas in future notes. Let's switch gears for a moment and get back to the Gold brothers, who introduced me to him. Ari and Ethan Gold are identical twins from San Francisco. Ari's the filmmaker and Ethan's the songwriter. I first came into Ari's orbit through Helicopter, the still unfinished feature project I was lucky enough to help edit. The original short was about the death of Ari and Ethan's mother, Melissa Gold, in the 1991 helicopter crash that also killed her then-boyfriend, legendary concert promoter Bill Graham. Bill Graham himself is a Berlin Footnote figure almost by accident. Born Wolfgang Grojonke in Berlin in 1931.
I was living in an orphanage in Berlin, and there was an exchange with a French orphanage in the summertime. When Germany invaded France, the Red Cross sent someone to get us, and we joined the rest of civilization that just marched south as the invading troops kept coming further south.
A Jewish child hopping orphanage to orphanage, crossing the Atlantic and eventually arriving in San Francisco, where he'd later help invent the modern rock concert.
You are not responsible for the performance. You are responsible for the chemical juxtapositions of moving things a certain way. What happens when a person comes to a facility? You take their ticket. What happens from that point on? I'm not saying it's always groovy and it's always vibey, but I don't say, come to my gig where the environment is pleasant, where you have a nice stage setting, where I guarantee the group will play 19 hours, where we will have a jam. No, it says Fleetwood Mac and the Jefferson Airplane or Santana or the Rolling Stones, and this is the price of the ticket, come.
He named his Marin County estate Masada. Masada is the ancient fortress above the Dead Sea where, according to Josephus, Jewish rebels made their last stand against the Roman Empire.
This is the Bill Graham most people don't know, a man who finds peace atop a mountain in Marin County, the place he calls home, a museum of rock memorabilia, every wall a photo or a poster, cabinets holding souvenirs like Keith Richards' boots from the last Rolling Stones tour. And this refuge he gives a special name.
Masada.
Why did you pick that name?
It's in part of Israel's history. It's a place where man stood firm rather than become enslaved. No matter what the day is, I hit those gates and the gate opens and I come up that hill and I drive up this way and I make that swing in here. Everything's okay with the world.
And Helicopter isn't exactly a normal documentary. It's a film about grief and art's role in healing. The new feature returns to that loss from a stranger ritual angle. Alejandro Jodorowsky gives Ari a psychomagic assignment. Ari must put on his mother's clothing. He must take a helicopter through the towers and cables where she and Bill died, He must get on a bicycle and ride up Mount Tamalpais, where Bill Graham built his Masada residence, burn his mother's clothing, as well as release a bird. Jodorowsky is one of cinema's great holy lunatics, the Chilean film director of El Topo and The Holy Mountain, a filmmaker, a tarot mystic, and inventor of what he calls psychomagic. The basic idea is that symbolic acts can work directly on the unconscious, a private ritual staged in the real world, as if the psyche needs images strong enough to argue with trauma on its own terms. So as Ari was trying to raise the funds for a helicopter, and for the final narrative segment that would complete his long, strange family exorcism, he somehow made another film, and this one barely needed an editor at all because it was staged as one long live cinema take. It follows the brothers as they search for their dying 99-year-old father through North Beach on the streets of San Francisco. Here's a clip from the trailer.
No.
Ethan, that's the moment the trailer becomes emotional.
It's
you
the
let
moment
it play.
the trailer becomes cheap. The whole trailer is wrong for brother versus brother.
Okay, it's a little bit cheesy, but how do you sell a 90-minute film with no cuts in a trailer which has to have cuts?
That doesn't even matter. It's about us in the streets.
It's about looking for our father. It's about love. It's about passion. It's about song.
When was the last time you cried? I don't have a good answer for that. You need Cryagra. We are the Gold brothers.
We are the Brothers Gold.
All right, Brothers Gold. We couldn't get the social on Gold brothers. We are identical twins. We should lock down a gig for you. You ready to rock it? I'll talk to you soon.
Experiencing it from the point of view of our father, who was like the literary lion of the city, sort of.
He wasn't the literary.
Or in his own
Let's
mind.
not lionize him too much, but yeah, he was a known guy in the literary world. But I like to keep things as true as they were.
Here's a snapshot from his 1978 appearance on The James Day Show.
Herbert Gold is a writer, the author of essays, short stories, and novels, whose articles and stories have appeared in most, if not all, of America's quality journals of opinion and fiction over the past 25 years. He first won attention in the world of books with 2 novels, published before he was 30, which critics felt held the promise of a mature writer, since made manifest in such novels as Fathers, Salt, and The Man Who Was Not With It. His most recent book, My Last 2,000 Years, is an autobiographical account of his search for his own Jewishness. It was published last year. In addition to his writing, Herbert Gold is also taught at Berkeley, Stanford, Cornell, and at Harvard.
When you're very young, you have no imagination of death, no imagination of the end, and therefore probably less imagination of the beginning. And I was a lot of things. I was a young fellow from the Midwest. I was ambitious. I was trying to make money. I was trying to write books. I was trying to get girls, and I got some of those things and didn't get some of the others, and kept some and didn't keep others. But some kind of permanent connection with the world is a metaphysics.
So you really felt no permanent connection with the world, or a permanent connection with a culture you could call your own, not even with American culture?
Sure. I'm an American too, and I'm a man too, and I'm a worker of a sort also. But something to knit this together, for me, has turned out to be a historical allegiance with my ancestors.
What is the essence of the reality that we're now fixed to us?
The pigeons have come home to roost. It's very hard to be proud to be an American right today when, as the news comes out of Washington. It's very hard to say that America has never fought an unjust war. I mean, we could say that with some justification 10 years ago, maybe. At least if we said it, we didn't have to be stupid or dishonest. I think there was, in the late 60s, the peculiar so-called youth revolution of drugs and rock, which made people say, the youth will provide our gurus and make the new world for us. Well, we've come to our senses about that.
A half a century later, his sons continue to make sense of it all, having stemmed from a correspondence of poems written and sent via U.S. mail in their book Father vs. Sons, and expanded as the film Brother vs. Brother.
We shot this very cheaply, so we wanted to capture real life, and so everyone is playing a kind of exaggerated version of themselves, and that allowed us to not have to invent and pay for things. And we shot in the real world and shot in the places that we know and love. This film is filled with songs that were written to kind of reflect the story of my character, who's a version of me, and Ari's character and our relationship and our struggles to kind of separate from each other as somewhat codependent brothers, which is something I think a lot of people who have families can relate to. Yeah, for me, I'm a song guy, and so I like to sculpt songs that tell a story that's meaningful for other people. As twins, we probably traded black sheep position. Ethan probably has, as you notice, tended towards more of the goth way of thinking. So would you agree with that assessment, Mr. Gold?
Yeah, I think I took on depression as a way of life at age 9. It was just like it was a look. No,
there was a depression stick. We had a friend. We had actually had a little comedy singing group when we were 10, and our partner in it had a depression stick.
On that note, I'm going to leave you with the single "I'm Always Sad" from Ethan's forthcoming album. special thanks to the Casino for Social Medicine, Annita Sleep, Daniel Zander, Nikolas Schreck, Ethan Gold, Ari Gold, and Olgierd Bohushevitz for his adaptation of Radio Werewolf's Epiphany on the Freinberg. If you haven't already, be sure to listen to the first audio tour and Transmission 001, Charlottengrad and the Sunken Village of Lietzow, available in English and German under Berlin Footnote. If you want to access the Forbidden Notes, live tours, and plenty of feet pics, check out the Patreon page. We'll probably get one more side note out before our big tour at the Romanisches Café this summer. Transmission out.